What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to InvestQ. And we got some interesting news regarding the space sector, specifically for the individual stock Intuitive Machines, ticker symbol LUNR. Because as you do know, yesterday they reported their quarterly earnings, and there's some highlights that we should be covering today that I found interesting. And on the surface, some of those numbers do seem pretty massive, and they are massive because we're talking about record quality revenue of approximately $206 million. They got a backlog that has exploded to roughly $1.8 billion, and hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, and management is maintaining a very aggressive full year revenue outlook. But once we move further down the income statement, there are definitely some numbers that investors do need to pay attention to, particularly regarding the company's losses and cash burn. So in this video, I want to quickly break down the good, the bad, and what I think investors should be watching next when it comes to Intuitive Machines. And as always, none of this is financial advice. Please do your own due diligence, do your own research before making any investment decisions. So starting off with the biggest headline number from this report is Intuitive Machine generated approximately $206.2 million in revenue. Now, with that being said, this is a huge jump compared to the Q2 of 2025 when the company generated approximately $50.3 million. And let me just scroll down. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, total revenues for Q2 of 2025 is at 50.3 million, comparing it to 206.2 million in Q2 of 2026. So the important thing to note about this is this wasn't coming just from one area of business. The company, it specifically attributed its record quarterly revenue to execution across spacecraft production, CLPS, OMES, and NSNS. And product revenue also came in at roughly $166.7 million. Service revenue contributed to about $36.7 million, and grant revenue added approximately $2.8 million. And for a company trying to transition from being viewed primarily as a speculative lunar company into a much larger space infrastructure business, this is the kind of revenue growth that is extremely important for the company. Sorry, just got to crack this. Alrighty. Now, arguably, the bigger number that people will be discussing is regarding their backlog, because per the headline, their backlog was extremely massive. Again, it's at $1.8 billion, which, to be exact, it's $1.76 billion in backlog, which the company, they rounded up to $1.8 billion. And at the end of 2025, their backlog was only $213 million. So we're talking about an increase of $1.55 billion in just 6 months. That is mind-blowing. It's pretty big, guys. And during Q2 alone, Intuitive Machines, it says that it booked approximately $920 million in awards, followed by another approximately $300 million of awards in Q3 quarter to date. And the company did also highlight a $600 million contract for 3 commercial GEO satellites. And this does matter because one of the biggest questions surrounding these emerging space companies is whether the opportunity that they're talking about actually translate into contracted business. And for the case of LUNR, that backlog is starting to become very substantial. Now, to be clear, again, like we've talked about many times in other videos, backlog is not the same as revenue or cash in the bank, making that very clear, as I always do in my other videos. Excuse me, guys. The company does still have to execute those contracts successfully, and they have to convert that backlog into revenue. But $1.8 billion gives investors significantly, and I mean significantly, more visibility into the future than this company had even several quarters ago. Now, another development that I personally think deserves attention is national security. Management says that year over year, national security revenue expanded from approximately 3% to 30% in Q2 of 2026. and they do expect continued growth following a July award for 18 spacecraft supporting the Accelerated Missile Defense Tranche 3, or AMDT3, which is in the Golden Dome constellation. Now, that is important because it demonstrates how Lunar's business is expanding beyond simply landing things on the moon. Quick reminder before we continue, if you're enjoying the content and want to connect with the community, check out the first link below for the free InvestQ community. And if you want access to advanced stock research and tools, the second link is a Prophecy 7-day trial for just $7. And last, if you want daily market updates and behind the scenes content, follow me on Instagram using the third link in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. They're pursuing lunar infrastructure, commercial satellites, communications, Earth orbit services, and now increasingly national security space programs. And the company also highlighted NASA contracts involving the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter Camera and ShadowCam, supporting lunar imaging, data storage, processing, and analytics. So we're starting to see a much broader business develop here. There's $367 million cash position, and regarding the balance sheet, that's the amount of cash that they have in that's the amount of that's their cash position right now. Because Intuitive Machines ended Q2 with approximately $367 million in cash and cash equivalents, as we do see right here. Now, that is a substantial amount of liquidity. However, you got to put in the context that when we look at the end of December 31st in 2025, their cash position, cash and cash equivalents, was at $582 million. Well, actually, rounding up, it's $583 million. So that does show that there has been a decline in their cash and cash equivalents. And management specifically said that Q2 included strategic growth investments involving advanced inventory, procurement, and long lead materials. And they are essentially spending today to support the amount of business that they expect to execute in the future. And I'm not going to sit here and say that's necessarily a bad thing. There are companies that do have that thought process, especially when the company's backlog is growing this aggressively. Again, a 6-month period increase of $1.55 billion is pretty substantial. And investors, in my opinion, they need to be watching the rate at which cash is being consumed. So just keep an eye out on that. And since we've talked about a lot of good things right now, and one bad thing, one concern regarding their cash and cash equivalents, their cash burn, the next thing I would say that should bring caution would be the fact that Intuitive Machines is still losing money, because the company did report a Q2 net loss of approximately $62.8 million, comparing it with $38.2 million during Q2 of last year. So net loss could be attributable to the company, net loss attributable to the company was approximately $46.4 million, and the loss attributable to Class A common shareholders was approximately $46.6 million, and loss per share came in at approximately 29 cents. Operating expenses have also increased dramatically as Lunar scales the business, and on an adjusted basis, EBITDA was approximately negative $13.8 million. Now, there actually was improvement there, and adjusted EBITDA was approximately negative $25.4 million in Q2 2025. So adjusted EBITDA losses were nearly cut in half year over year, despite the company aggressively expanding their operations, but it's still negative. So this isn't a profitable growth story yet. And again, the other number that you should be paying attention to is regarding their free cash flow. Don't ignore this, because during the first months of 2026, net cash used in operating activities was approximately $111.9 million, and purchases of property and equipment added another $33.9 million. That resulted in approximately negative $145.8 million in free cash flow through the first 6 months of the year. So again, this company is investing very aggressively, and that's where the debate around Lunar becomes interesting, because if these investments help the company successfully execute again, I don't want to understate it, a massive backlog of $1.8 billion and eventually produce hundreds of millions or potentially billions in additional revenue, investors may look at this spending as necessary infrastructure investment. But on the flip side, if things get delayed, execution overall is delayed, and contracts don't convert the way that they expect them to, or if margins don't improve, or maybe the cash burn becomes too significant and it raises an even bigger flag because it's become a bigger concern, that's why I wouldn't look at revenue growth by itself. Now, another extremely important part of the report, and we always talk about this anytime we're covering any quarterly earnings report, and it's regarding forward guidance and the tonality of management, because management is guiding for full year 2026 revenue between $900 million and $1 billion. So if you take a second and step back and you look at the scale of that, LUNR generated approximately $206 million this quarter, and management still believes they're on track to potentially $1 billion in revenue for the entire year. Even more importantly, management is guiding positive EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA for full year 2026, and considering adjusted EBITDA was still negative $13.8 million this quarter, that implies that management expects meaningful improvement during the second half of the year. And that is probably one of the biggest things that I'm going to be watching for, because if the company can simultaneously continue growing revenue, execute against this massive backlog, and move towards positive adjusted EBITDA, the financial profile of this company starts looking very different. So overall, I thought this was a fascinating quarter, and there's ways to interpret this from both the bull and the bear sides of things. So what are your opinions on LUNR stock? Let me know what it is you guys think in the comment section below. And also let me know what you want to see in future upcoming videos. And if you did enjoy the content, feel free to smash the like and subscribe button. And if you are looking for exclusive content, feel more than free to become a member of my InvestQ community and check out the memberships all on my channel. With that being said, David-InvestQ out. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next video.